Hello, and welcome to another episode of Jayme's Journal, where you get to hear my journey to becoming a traditionally published author and reviews on urban fantasy books and series that I am now or have read in the past. On today's episode, I want to talk about Gina Lamanna. She's a USA Today best-selling author of at least 6 series, one of which I am going to be talking to you about today, and that is the Magic and Mixology series. So I was on Kindle Unlimited one day, I believe, and I couldn't find anything to read. I didn't have anything lined up. So I'm scrolling through the pictures of what they have available, and up pops this picture of this cocktail glass, and it's got the little umbrella, and it's this fun cocktail with the title Hex on the Beach on the front cover. And I know that they say you can't judge a book by its cover, but then they obviously haven't met me, because I totally do that all the time. In fact, I will go to the library, or I'll go to the bookstore, or wherever I can find a book, online, wherever, and I'll just scroll through book covers to see what catches my eye if I don't have anything that I'm already looking forward to reading. So I did that, and I found this series, and it's called Hex on the Beach. And I actually found the series when it first started. So I read the first book, and the second book was set to be released very soon after. And this is actually, I don't want to say an older series, but it's probably a few years old. So it's a complete series, and it's got 5 books. And it does start with Hex on the Beach, and it ends with Amuletto Kiss. So the series itself follows Lily Locke, who, by all standards and from the outside, looks to be a normal person, of course, because that's how it usually starts, right? So Lily Locke lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She's like this rock star at this marketing agency, and she is up for a promotion, and life is going good. And then her assistant gives her this quiz, right? And it's like this quiz about magic and normals, something like that. And she takes it, and she ends up finding out that she has magic, and she doesn't belong here. She has this whole family that she didn't know anything about. And the biological family that she thought she was living with and thought was her family is not actually her family. So she ends up going to the Isle, which is what they call it. And it's in the middle of the lake. And I was a little kind of wary about this whole thing, because urban fantasy is typically set in a place that we know, a city that we know, and everyday world kind of thing. There's not a lot of world building per se going on in an urban fantasy. But for this series, even though it starts out in Minneapolis, it ends up on the Isle. And then that's where you are. You're not really moving anywhere else in the real world, so to speak. So while I guess you can get away with calling it an urban fantasy, I feel like it isn't really. And Gina Lamanna actually really does some good world building when it comes to the Isle. And she really paints a good picture of what this place looks like. And you've got like the tropical feel of it, because Lily lives in this bungalow by the beach, and she has this like shop front that's set up on one side of the house where people can come and order these tinctures and potions and mixtures from her, because she finds out that she has this profession that is kind of handed down in her family, and that is being the mixologist on the Isle. So the former mixologist has died, and now it's up to Lily to take up the mantle and be the new mixologist for the Isle. And people will come to her, people from the community, and order potions and things for magical ailments and things like that. And that's her responsibility to sort of brew these potions. And even though she has this like giant tome that's been passed down that has all of these different mixtures already established in it, she finds out that she can actually make her own. And that's where the cover comes from. The Hex on the Beach is the first thing that she figures out that she can make. And it helps solve this really big problem on the Isle. So while she's doing the whole mixology thing, she's also learning more about her family and this maternal grandmother she didn't know, these 2 aunts that she has who are kind of, quirky. And these two cousins, one of which is a vampire who's blood intolerant, and the other one is a shifter who hasn't yet settled on her shape. She can kind of, transform into a house cat and small things, but she hasn't decided like what her true form is going to be. So the three cousins really kind of connect that way and help each other figure things out. In a way, it sort of reminds me about the series that we discussed last week, the Witches of the Midwest series, because that follows the three cousins too. I think that's a really interesting sort of point of view that I hadn't thought about before. Anyway, so we've got Lily and her two cousins and this love interest, Ranger X, who's the mysterious guy on the island. And he's sort of law enforcement. So, he's got the bad boy kind of thing going on. And that's awesome. And of course, there is some sort of mystery that Lily has to help solve. And she makes this potion to help solve the problem. And the world building is really great. I mean, the Isle, you've got this beach setting. The grandma lives in the middle of a maze, and you've got a town. So there's some really good world building going on there. And I feel like that's more actually fantasy than it is urban fantasy. Because again, urban fantasy, a lot of the time, is really preset or predetermined by wherever you're setting your supernatural community, so to speak. So, yeah. And I read a lot of the reviews that this got, and I feel like urban fantasy is kind of this spectrum of people. So you either love urban fantasy or you hate urban fantasy. For the most part is the vibe I'm getting from the reviews that I'm reading of some of the series that I have reviewed. So for this one, people who loved it said things like, this was a light and fun read, which I totally agree with. It's something that you could definitely sit down and read in an afternoon and want more and read the next one the next day. So you could be done with this series, I would say, in a week, definitely. So people liked that it was fun and it was light and it didn't have all of that, heavy in-depth stuff that some of the other series deals with. But that's also one of the reasons that people didn't like it. Some of the people that gave it bad reviews actually gave it bad reviews because it didn't have a lot of depth to it. They wanted to see Lily really delve into finding out more about her background. And instead, she sort of skims over a lot of that and just takes on this role of being the mixologist. And so people didn't really care for that. And Gina Lamanna got a lot of flack for having this, blood intolerant vampire and this shifter in this family with witches. Because how did that happen? And there's not a lot of background that explains where that comes from or how that works or the rules of the magic in that way. And if you remember, we discussed that. The whole idea of setting up rules for your magic and making sure that the boundaries are clear and that everything is satisfied so you're not stepping all over yourself when it comes to telling your story. So, I mean, that's one of the things that readers will ding you for. And this definitely got that. And while I did really enjoy the series, I enjoyed it because it was a fun, light read, not because they had a lot of depth to the characters or because the world building was just, so out of this world. It really was because I could pick it up, I could read it really quickly and digest it and not really have to think too much about it. So personally, overall, I would say I'm going to give this series a 4 out of 5 because it's super fun and light. And it's one of those things that if you're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month or 2020, this is one of those things that you can pick up and you can escape. You can leave your reality and live in Lily Locke's world for a while and get to know the hunky Ranger X and be part of Lily's world of magic and help save the day and feel really satisfied. But if you're looking for something that's going to be more in depth and more of a challenging read and something that has a lot more meat to its bones, then this is probably not the series for you. But I did really enjoy Gina Lamanna's voice when it comes to her writing style. So I think that even though I didn't necessarily rate this series really high, I would definitely go back and read some of her other series. She's got another series called The Hex Files, I believe. And I think that, again, I'm going to say I'm judging a book by its cover because I was looking through the books and I'm going, hey, here is this strong female character on the cover. And it's got, those light and dark shadows of blue and the electric stuff going on with the magic. And absolutely, I'm going to judge a book by its cover. And I'm going to say, that looks more urban fantasy to me, and that looks more like the kind of read that I want to delve into when it comes to my own genre, the thing that I write in, and something that I want to spend some time reading. So, yeah, overall, I think that Gina Lamanna, great voice, really good writer. Could she use some more depth? Absolutely, but I think anyone can when it comes to writing. And it really is just going to depend on what you're trying to convey to your readers. So that's my review of the Magic and Mixology series. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions or comments, you can always feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media platforms. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter at Jayme Phelps Author, on Instagram, Jayme.Phelps_author, and always on my website, authorjaymephelps.com, where you can subscribe to my newsletter, where I'll have more on my upcoming novel. And you can read my blog. You can listen to more of these podcast episodes, and you can join my writing challenge. I have a writing challenge that's active on my website right now, where I would like to connect with you on a deeper level of writing because, again, NaNoWriMo is coming up soon. And I'm thinking I might want to put together a group of people to do the NaNoWriMo challenge together. I know I'll be taking part in that challenge. I am going to be writing book number 2 in my series during November, and I'm hoping to see all of you there to join me on my journey. You can also hear more episodes of this podcast almost anywhere you can hear a podcast, including but not limited to Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Apple iTunes, and now on iHeart Podcasts. Also, you can find them on YouTube under Jayme's Journal. I look forward to talking to you again soon on the next episode of Jayme's Journal.